On January 7th, 2023, the Central Subway finally opened for full service between Sunnydale and Chinatown after 12 long years of construction. This new extension helps plug a gap in the Bay Area's rail network between BART and Caltrain, as well as provide a straight shot from the Caltrain station at 4th and King to Chinatown and the financial district a few blocks away. So how did we get here, and was it ultimately worth it? Before we discuss whether the Central Subway is worth it, we must look at how it came about. The Central Subway is the second phase of the T3rd Muni Metro line and is shown as the North Beach Corridor component of Muni's 4-corridor plan. It was also part of Willie Brown's mayoral campaign and election promises to residents in Chinatown after they heavily protested the demolition of I-480 following the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake due to internal and external political pressure. Muni changes the priorities of which projects should be funded, opting to fund the North Beach Corridor rather than the Geary Corridor mentioned in the 4-corridor plan. Funding was secured in the late 2000s, and construction began in 2011. Originally, the Central Subway was meant to open in 2017. However, due to various construction issues, this date was pushed back several times before a hard opening date of January 7th, 2023 was settled, which brings us to today. The Central Subway, while a very nice looking and gold-plated project, certainly did not live up to the hype after the initial opening day. It has several core issues which we'll go into, including where it goes and doesn't go, the accessibility to and from the surface, the surprisingly long travel times, and frequencies. Oh, look at this. Let's start with where the Central Subway was supposed to go. Originally, Phase 1 was supposed to go to North Beach. However, due to the aforementioned construction difficulties, the station there was cut due to cost, and the supervisor representing North Beach blocking the construction of a station there. This is despite the fact that the tunnels extend all the way to a site at Columbus Avenue and Washington Street, where the TBMs were to be extracted. Due to this decision, the Central Subway only went to Chinatown, which certainly gimped the effectiveness of the line at saving time compared to the bus routes it was supposed to relieve, the 30 and 45 buses. Cars with the tables and the 4 seats, I like those. This leads to my next point, which is that travel times would not be significantly reduced compared to the 30 and 45 buses. If anything, the Central Subway only shaves 5 to 6 minutes of travel time to get to and from the 4th and King Caltrain station and Chinatown, compared to the 30 and 45 buses. This longer travel time can be explained by the lack of good transit signal priority in the surface sections of the extension. Basically, trains have to conform to the timing of the traffic light, rather than being able to trigger a green light, or at least minimize the wait time for a green light. This slows down the journey time by at least 1 to 3 minutes, and can mean the difference between making or missing a crucial connection. I even had to run to the 4th and Brandon station to the 4th and King Caltrain station just to make my Caltrain connection. All that exercise I had to do just because the transit signal priority was not good enough on the surface section of the Central Subway. Compared the Central Subway's transit signal priority to the TSP implemented on 250 intersections interfacing with the 38, 14, and 8X bus routes. According to Muni, those routes all showed a 4 to 5 minute decrease in overall travel time. These statistics go to show that even without dedicated lanes, transit signal priority has a non-negligible impact on travel times, and the Central Subway should really improve its transit signal priority if it is to become a faster and more reliable route than the 30 and 45 buses. But by far the biggest issue with regards to travel time isn't the lack of transit signal priority, or the surface section by itself. It's the poor frequencies. The low frequencies of the Central Subway at every 10 minutes on weekdays and every 12 minutes on weekends makes it a far less attractive mode compared to the 30 and 45 buses, which each come every 5 to 10 minutes. If Muni had run the Central Subway far more frequently, say at every 2.5 minutes as promised by them, then travel times probably wouldn't be as long, as people would spend less time waiting at stations for trains. Of course, while the frequency may be the biggest issue at the Central Subway, I'm not done yet. As we descend into the tunnels on screen, you could probably guess what the next issue I bring up will be. Deep stations, and the more limited access they have compared to stations closer to the surface compounds the frequency and time-saving issues the Central Subways has. From my experience, it takes at least 2 to 3 minutes to descend to platform level from the surface at Union Square and Chinatown stations. That's about the same amount of time between the buses, the 30 and 45 combined, to show up at these two stops, right at the doorsteps of businesses and residences. It must also be noted that the deep stations and the depth of the Central Subway is necessitated by the fact that it has to pass under the Market Street Subway and deal with the crazy topography of San Francisco, namely the hill which Chinatown is situated upon. Finally, we must address the elephant in the room, the cost. The end cost of this project was about $2 billion, $1.95 billion if you want to be exact. Yes, $2 billion for about 2 miles of an underground tram line. Considering the ridership numbers today, it is very hard to argue that the Central Subway had a good return on investment, especially when compared to the Van Ness and Geary BRTs, the two other big transit construction projects in San Francisco. Of course, this by no means discounts the spectacular stations that have already been built and their accompanying art pieces, along with the very fun experience I had when I attended the opening day with my friends. In fact, I even have a few recommendations for those riding Central Subway. The big glass art piece at the mezzanine level of the Yerba Buena Moscone station is quite a spectacle. You can see all the different colors, and it really nicely contrasts with the glossy black walls which predominate the station. The hanging sculpture above the platform of Union Square Station is really something. I'd even argue that the crossbeams above the escalators could be something which is admired. The sheer scale of it is both ridiculous and awe-inspiring. Then there's Chinatown. I really like the green-colored walls when you enter the station. It adds bold colors, which definitely makes the station look a lot more personable and welcoming compared to some of the bland-ass white walls, which makes stations look more like the back rooms than a well-used station. Of course, there's two big metal sculptures in the station, which make it all the more satisfying to admire. And then there's the fact that I'm with my friends, who were patient enough to deal with my constant camera action and do some silly stuff while on this journey. I'll never forget the smiles we had and that one accidental TV appearance. So what do we ultimately think about the Central Subway? On a personal level, it has great sentimental value to me, and genuinely impressive architecture which I'll never forget. However, it has objectively failed to fulfill its objectives, and isn't a good project when compared to the other major transit projects in San Francisco. But the point of this video isn't to say that it should be neglected. Quite the opposite, in fact. Core issues that I mentioned earlier can be fixed with a few solutions. The first is to jack up frequencies on the Central Subway. This will make it a far more compelling service to use compared to the 30 and 45 buses that it is supposed to relieve. The second is to implement transit signal priority, and I mean actually good transit signal priority on the surface section of the Central Subway. Speeding up the Central Subway even further on the surface sections where it's slowest will make it an even more compelling option when combined with increased frequencies. The third solution would be a significant extension of the Central Subway. Extending the Central Subway will finally make it a fast, useful crosstown line and relieve pressure off the 30 and 45 buses. Muni has already started planning on this northern extension of the Central Subway and is deciding where the station should go. Quite frankly, it should happen as soon as possible given the high ridership potential and huge time savings it will provide to residents and visitors alike. And that will be it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one.